Bills Mafia, what is going on? Good evening. Happy Thursday. How are we tonight? Welcome to this week's episode of Buffalo Late Night here on the Cover One Sports Network. We've got a jam-packed show for you. It's going to be good. I promise. I'm your host, Thomas Flaws. I am super glad you are here with us this evening. Man, man, today's been wild. A lot of stuff going on in the world, a lot of stuff going on in sports. But I'm glad you're tuning in with us tonight. And if you're listening on Spotify, happy Friday to you. You can find our show free on all social media and streaming platforms, including Spotify, YouTube, or however you pod. If you are watching on Twitter right now, come on over. What are you doing? Why are you watching on Twitter? Come join us. Come be part of the conversation. We'd love to have you. Also, want to make sure you're hitting that subscribe button. Come and join us. Be part of the party. We want to see you every single week. Hit that notification button. It'll let you know every single time one of the Cover One shows is live. Also, super chats are open for this and every other Cover One show. So if you want to be heard, click that button. Now, I got some exciting news. I've got two fantastic giveaways going on right now. If you head on over to my Twitter page, you'll see the first. Ian will go ahead and put that stuff in the chat, but you'll see that first one pinned at the top. I'm giving away a couple Buffalo Bills tickets to a couple games this year, both preseason and preseason and regular season. I was like postseason, we haven't even gotten there yet. And secondly, I'm giving away a copy of Madden 24. Obviously, we all know JA17 Josh Allen is on the cover. Huge. So go ahead and get in on that. Get a chance to win one of those prizes. Now, we are officially 1 month from training camp. I know a lot of people are excited. News came out about dates. News came out about tickets. Go ahead and subscribe to Cover One's One Pass. That's where you're going to get the best content. You're going to get the best coverage and analysis heading into the 2023 season. So join us. Be with us. It's going to be a lot of fun. Guys, one other thing before I get into this night. Obviously, it's been a very interesting day, to say the least. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you stopping in with Cover One and giving me a listen. I truly appreciate you just giving me a chance, giving Buffalo Late Night a chance. So tonight, we got great guests with us, a real good one. We got two of my favorites joining us this evening. First up, the host of the Bruce Exclusive, the weatherman your mom secretly thinks about when she's with your dad, Mr. Bruce Nolan. And also joining us, the host of the Overreaction Sports Podcast and the Off Tackle with John Fina podcast, is my guy, Mr. Joe Miller. Fellas, what's going on?
I don't think I've ever been introduced that way before, but I got to be honest, I kind of dig it a little bit. Like, if we could kind of make that a thing, like, I think I would be down for it.
Yeah. Well, who's thinking about me? Anybody? Probably not.
Your beautiful wife is. Yep.
Okay.
If anybody doesn't know, Joe Miller's got a pretty wife.
She is
pretty wife.
We can just imagine or assume that Bruce does as well, right? So,
absolute pinnacle of human existence.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
She actually, just like his logo, but hers is pink.
The Mrs. Exclusive.
Let's be honest, Jennifer Aniston is a looker. So, yeah.
Yep. Oh, we got the fluffy potato in the house tonight. That's a nice one. I like that name. The fluffy potato.
I was like, are you calling me a fluffy potato? Like,
we got the the weatherman your mom thinks about and the fluffy potato.
Right.
Let's get on with this show.
No, I'll be leaving. No.
Guys, first and foremost, I definitely want to send out, and on a more serious note, want to send out my condolences to the 5 men who tragically passed away in today's Titan submersible incident. Not even today, potentially a couple of days ago. I always try to finish off my show by saying, be kind, be nice. And I kind of want to start off the show with a very similar sentiment. I know I've seen a dichotomous feeling about this situation. A lot of people talking about the wealth of the people involved on the submersible, people kind of having their opinions based on what's going on. I want to ask where the humanity has gone. We got to start caring about people in general and just who they are and worrying about them just as being people. It's a sad day. Anytime anybody loses their life, it's a sad situation. So, guys, prayers up to them, to their families, anybody involved, anybody that knew them, any that worked with them, anybody in that industry, in the submersible, people that are into, exploring all that stuff. It's a tragic situation that unfortunately happened, but be kind to each other, in this situation, just be kind to people, think about people, worry about people. This type of stuff happens, and we need to stop, on social media, just being completely beyond the fact of having compassion, because life happens. That being said, beyond that, the other thing we saw tonight was the very first episode of the Buffalo Bills stadium series, I guess you want to call it, that they released. They do an unbelievable job. Their media team is one of the best, I truly believe. In fact, one of the guys that does the media stuff for the Bills also did my wedding. He's awesome. Guy named Kevin Carges. He is a very, very talented man. But they did a great project. If you haven't watched it, don't watch it now. Watch it later. Watch this. I think what we truly need to talk about is how much we need to be appreciative of Kim and Terry Pegula. I know the initial thought about them was, man, what they did, they saved the Buffalo Bills from leaving town. But they truly care. They truly believe in the Buffalo Bills and the community and doing what's right for everybody involved. So that's something I got to say. What they've done for Western New York and what they're doing with this new stadium and caring about the fans is, I think it's next level.
Joe is a better person to talk to about this kind of thing than I am. He's a season ticket holder. He's a longtime ticket holder. His family ticket holders, lives in the Buffalo area. There is a reasonable chance that I don't ever see the new stadium, like, in person. Like, I don't go to games. That's not my thing, right? Maybe 10 years from now, 15, 20, 30, if I'm still alive, maybe I'll go to a game at the stadium. So I'm very disconnected from the stuff. I usually leave a lot of those conversations to people who are not only more apt to speak on it, but more affected by it. So I have a tendency to lean into the conversations that are held by other people who are not just more plugged in there, but also that information is more relevant to them, like Joe.
For sure.
Agreed. I don't know if you're looking for some sort of a response from me. I mean, it's, the best thing about the stadium happening is that it's going to guarantee it, the Bills being in Buffalo beyond my lifetime and well into my kid's lifetime. And my daughter is a rabid Buffalo Bills fan. As if you've paid attention to my show for any amount of time, you know that about McKenna. So for me, it's settling, being my age, and I'm older than both of you. And going through the late 90s and all of the 2000s, when all we were told by the NFL is how this city can't support an NFL franchise anymore. And, and Bruce and I have gone back and forth in DM and private chats just about the lies that I feel were perpetrated upon the Buffalo citizenry, the people of Erie County, Niagara County, and Western New York in general, Monroe County. And just as far as that whole conversation goes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I believe they did it right. Yes, so wildly excited, wildly thankful for the Pegulas. Hope I can afford tickets, right? And that's kind of where we all are as season tickets holders.
Yeah,
or tickets. But at the end of the day, mistakes were made, and the building's not built yet. So, in my opinion, so they could have thought about quality of life for the people of Western New York while they did this. Outside of just, well, we saved the Bills, isn't that enough? And at some point in time, the citizens of this county and this city need to be like, no, that's not enough. Like, you need to do more as a politician, but that's a different conversation for a different day.
I agree, for sure. That being said, Ian, go ahead and let's hear from our guy, Greg Thompson.
I know him, by the way. I know Greg Thompson. He's a nice guy.
Hey guys, Cover One is excited to announce our new partnership with BetUS. BetUS has a live wagering on all major games, the best betting variety in the business, and an easy deposit and withdrawal process with the fastest payouts in the industry. Our loyal Cover One fans get a choice between 2 exclusive offers, either a 125% sign-up bonus on your first deposit up to $2,500 or a free $50 bet with no deposit required. Just use promo code COVER1 on the links provided in the show description below. BetUS, where the game begins.
Good old Greg.
Why is he so good
guys.
looking? Why is he so good looking? That's what I want to know. Like
that and his hair, unbelievable.
Right.
Him and Perino, man.
Right.
Oh, it's insulting. My hair is thinning and his is perfect. Whatever. That being said, guys, if you do have any betting interest, go check out BetUS. Use the promo code COVER1. Get some free money. Get some free money back. It's worth it. Now, let's get into everybody's favorite segment here on Cover One and Buffalo Late Night. Ian, go ahead.
Damn!
That's right. Everybody's favorite segment, Damn. This week's Damn award recipient hasn't been recognized for his actions until now, surprisingly. Tyreek Hill is a polarizing figure in the media. Well, he has been an incredible receiver since he was drafted, being a major player in 2 different powerhouse receiving corps. His off-the-field behavior, well, it's been questionable, to say the least. Mr. Hill has been accused of assault after he and 2 unidentified women illegally boarded a chartered vessel. When a marina employee began questioning Hill and an argument ensued, Cheetah then struck the employee and was separated from the employee by the staff. He then fled the scene, and after being picked up by the police, he reportedly told them, "I can buy you and the boat. I'm number 10 with the Miami Dolphins." As damning as the evidence seems, Tyreek is no stranger to trouble. He was convicted of domestic violence in 2014 after punching, strangling, and throwing his pregnant girlfriend while he was a member of the University of Oklahoma's football team. He was also investigated for child abuse in 2019 after a 3-year-old son sustained a broken arm, where he managed to dodge a conviction despite the lead prosecutor of Kansas City saying he believed a crime had been committed. Additionally, Hill was recorded by his fiancee discussing the broken arm and how his son was scared of him, saying to his fiancee, "You should be afraid of me too," for proving once again that the NFL will pay huge sums of money to giant pieces of shit as long as they can run fast and catch a ball. We raise our finger, specifically the middle one. Yes, this is Buffalo Late Night, and yes, that is a part of this, to Tyreek Hill and award him this week's Damn Award. There we are.
Damn. Didn't the guy that he get punched walk it back? Like originally he said that I'm not going to press charges because he's a Miami Dolphin. I'm a big Dolphins fan. And since then he has walked it back and has been like, you know what? About that, I'm going to probably press some charges.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure somebody probably said, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Right.
It was Tyreek Hill and get paid. I don't know. Fellas, what do you think about Tyreek Hill? Obviously, this isn't the first time. I know somebody brought up, Calvin Ridley and betting and whatnot. And betting, that's more integrity-based with the game, and they have to worry about that. But what's your thought? Guys have been suspended and kicked out of the league for similar to less for a league that really truly speaks about domestic violence and whatnot. What do you think needs to be done?
It's been proven that you don't have to have charges pressed against you in order for it to be a violation of the personal conduct policy. Like that's been a established precedent from the NFL. So the idea that charges weren't filed against him doesn't clear him, especially given precedent and given history. So this is a scenario where anything that could happen with Tyreek Hill, it might not even happen until next year anyway. So it's one of those things where the news cycle will move it at such a speed, maybe the speed of a cheetah, perhaps, that it'll be out of the public consciousness in the next couple of weeks. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, in July of 2024, we'll get a notification that Tyreek Hill got suspended for 4 games to start the 2024 season. We're like, oh, that's right. He hit somebody at a marina, didn't he? So it's one of those things where, given the gap of time, I don't even really think about it that much. I just go, okay, make a note, check a box. I'll check it. I'll set a calendar for July of 2024, and then I'll check in and see if this matters at all. That's the way that the NFL has historically worked, regardless of whether or not. I mean, look at what's going on with Alvin Kamara. I mean, Alvin Kamara has had this hanging over him for like 18 months, and we still don't have an answer on what's going on with him. And so for me, given the speed at which it moves out of public consciousness and given the opposite speed in which the NFL moves on cases like this, I almost don't even actually think about it at the time it happens. I just push it down the road and go, you know what? I'll get to that later. I'll put it in a file. I'll stick it in a filing cabinet. We'll close it up. I still have filing cabinets because I'm old. And so I'll just pull it out a year from now and go, oh, that's right. Tyreek Hill. Yeah, that's a thing. See, yeah, Joe's got a filing cabinet. He knows what's up. So that's the way that I typically view it. I know it sounds strange because the time to talk about is when it's current, but that's never the time when anything happens. Nothing actually happens now anyway. So I can talk until I'm blue in the face about it, but that's not the way the NFL works. So you know what? I'll deal with it when they decide to deal with it. And they've already proven that they don't deal with it when it happens.
Yeah, there's a lot to be discussed as it pertains to, yeah, but what about? Yeah, but what about, right? And it's always a yeah, but what about? And there's always going to be opinions and feelings on what is worse than something else, especially when we're talking about this type of stuff. And I'm not here to determine or to judge or to necessarily paint a picture for anybody that's in this panel or listening, whether live or via the thousands that I'm sure that are going to download this as a podcast and try to tell you or give you an opinion or try to set a boundary on what is worse than something else. You know, when you're talking about gambling, the integrity of the league is at stake. The integrity of the entire league is at stake. And at the same time, I could argue that the performance of referees during football games also puts the integrity of the entire league at stake. Meanwhile, you've got domestic violence and you've got rape and you've got batteries and you've got all kinds of other crazy stuff out there. And I think I would wrap it up with this. You know, there's a fine line between confidence and ego. And there's a fine line between ego and narcissism. And when you throw $100 million on top of that pile, either a bonfire is going to ignite or there's going to be probably some learning and some things that need to happen. The NFL needs to be better. I don't know what to say. And the hard part about the NFL being better is it puts us as fans who, pay for it all in a difficult position because we end up without a player on our football team that potentially makes stats, makes wins, earns money, creates money. And the hard part about that, and I don't mean to bring up a sore subject, is Matt Araiza, right? You get the entire world that comes down against this situation. And I was one of them. And for me, it wasn't a matter of me. And I got called out quite a bit on Twitter recently, just about, you were one of the ones that said he was guilty. And I was like, I did not say he was guilty. I said, where there's smoke, there's fire. And in his deposition, he made some statements that said he was there. Some things happened, blah, 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 blah. Well, he has since been proven that he wasn't there, but there was consequences to that situation. We might find out that when all this is said and done, that Tyreek Hill didn't punch somebody and didn't do these things. So then it turns into, to Bruce's point, the fact that the NFL sometimes takes a long time to react. Where is the innocent till proven guilty part? Like, this is a balance that I'm not meant to respond to. I can just sit back and scratch my head and wonder at times, and then either be proven right or proven wrong in the end 9 months later when something either happens or it doesn't. So I don't know if there's any easy way to navigate this. Thomas, you are a smart man. If you've got an idea, I'd love to hear it.
You know, in these type of situations, I think you're damned if you do, and I think you're damned if you don't. Quite frankly, whatever stance you take is going to be one that people are going to probably find some type of criticism for. We've seen that time and again. You talked the Matt Araiza thing.
Mm-hmm.
People took their victory laps one way or the other with that one. You'll see the same thing in every instance of life. I think the situation's unfortunate, though I will say, generally speaking, when you're more than a one-time offender, that
100%
proof becomes lesser and less. Needless to say, man, it's hard because like you said, with a guy like Tyreek Hill makes the Dolphins.
For sure.
I mean, as good as Tua is, Tyreek Hill makes the Dolphins.
For
and
sure.
You take him off the Dolphins, what are they again? Right? That's sad. And that's sad that we're in a state of our society that sometimes you say like, oh, I guess, you get away with stuff because it's worth making sure that they make millions and billions of dollars of a product. So I don't think it's a good situation. I don't think it's a good look. I think it makes things acceptable that shouldn't be acceptable. But unfortunately, in the line of business that they are, we've seen, and it's been proven, that stuff gets brushed under the rug more often than it doesn't.
Mm-hmm. Fair. I was going to bring up another point, but I'll just refrain. I'm not feeling it. I'm not feeling like lighting the fire. I'm not on Tyreek's side. Obviously, I'm a Bills fan. So that right there, like, I'm excited about the idea of not having him at some point in time during a season to hurt that team. So he hurt them. But at the end of the day, you've got to wonder, where the line is and how do you navigate it? And that's the problem with this public persona. And the hard part about everything that the NFL is and everything that we even do is the fact that they are more of a celebrity. They're more in the public limelight. They're more a household name today than they ever have been. It was as much as the Andre Reed was a household name in 1992. Tyreek Hill is far more of a household name now. But the law is still, it's just, it's tough, man.
And the sad part is he'll end up in the Hall of Fame. Even with
maybe
all the discretionary stuff.
Maybe. I'm not saying that yet. I mean, maybe. So there's got to be some, maybe.
Unless he does something after his career, people will forget.
He's a wide receiver. It's harder for wide receivers to make the Hall of Fame than just about any other position. Well, besides special teams, Steve Tasker.
For sure. That being said, let's talk about a wide receiver because we're going to do this real quick before we get deep into our own conversation. We are going to pacify a bunch of fans who love to talk about this conversation because why not? Obviously, we've had some stuff on Diggs conversation that just goes on and around across the merry-go-round and around the carousel. DeAndre Hopkins again brings his name up into this. And with the Stephon Diggs situation, we obviously know that, there was rumor from Craig Carton, which if you listen, guys, hold on. Let me just be clear. Craig Carton doesn't know what he's talking about. Just because you're given a microphone doesn't mean you know what you're talking about. Just because you're given a show doesn't mean you have anything worth a nickel to speak on. I feel
attacked right now, Thomas. I feel like I'm being attacked right now.
Everybody loves you, Bruce the Weatherman. Listen, that is not an attack. It is an indictment of how good you truly are. You should be on Craig Carton's show. It should be the Bruce Nolan show. That being said, he spoke about the fact that DeAndre Hopkins, if Stephon Diggs restructuring his deal was to potentially bring DeAndre Hopkins. Then there was other news that people didn't think that they could bring DeAndre because of all the targets that had to go to Stephon. So, gentlemen, now that we know the dust is cleared, Stephon seems to be happy. We'll see. I think that's truly just unsettled at this moment. What do you feel about the DeAndre Hopkins situation? Is that something where he could potentially find himself in Buffalo, or is that ship at this point sailed and we should just move on?
I didn't think that it was a highly likely circumstance to begin with. And after the Buffalo Bills signed Leonard Floyd, it felt a lot less likely. When teams are pressed up against the cap, a lot of times they have one or two break glass in case of emergency contracts. You saw that with the Chiefs, and the Chiefs were like, you know what? We need to get a tackle in here like ASAP. And they used their break glass in case of emergency contract. So now you look at their situation and go, probably less likely to get a D-Hop. And that's the way I look at the DeAndre Hopkins situation. I think the fact that he has 2 visits that he's made officially on his free agent tour, and they were the Titans and the Patriots, probably tells you a little something about the market. And I think the main thing to consider here is that we did an entire news process around what is it DeAndre Hopkins actually wants. And we went through, he talked about the 5 quarterbacks that he really liked and wanted to play with it. Here's what it boils down to. All of that stuff is qualifiers after the money. It's after we find the teams who are willing to provide me with a threshold that has been reached as far as an acceptable contract. Then I'll take into consideration how good the quarterback is and whether or not we can win a Super Bowl. And you see this all the times. I don't understand why we assume that NFL players don't lie. It's hilarious. We go, oh, the GMs, oh man, it's lying season all the time. But then when a player says something like, oh man, he's telling the truth. No, they're all lying. Everyone's lying, okay? Let's just start with the basis that they're all lying to you. I want to win a Super Bowl. No, you want to make millions of dollars. And if you can happen to win a Super Bowl alongside that, then okay. Then that's great. It's an added plus. It's an added bonus. But you're not going to pass on a Super Bowl ring is not worth $10 million to these people. It's just not. It's not. And guess what? It wouldn't be worth it to me either. So I'm not going to poo-poo them. If you said, Bruce, I'll give you a Super Bowl ring or $10 million, I'm taking the $10 million and I'll build my own daggone Super Bowl ring. It'll be fake and you'll never even know. And then I'll have $9,800,000 left over. So you know what? We need to understand at the basis of all of these discussions is that this is a financial decision first and foremost that then has qualifications like a flow chart. The first thing in the flow chart is it an acceptable contract? Yes or no? If yes, then now we talk about all this stuff. How good's the quarterback? Can I win a Super Bowl with them? How do I get along with the offensive system? How do I think I'm going to get fit? Am I going to get targets? All that stuff like that. But we need to deal with the fact that the first thing is still the money. Like that's still the first thing. And the fact that there's two teams that have gotten within shouting distance of the contract that DeAndre Hopkins seems to want so that they even, because let's be honest, the only reason you even visit with them is because the first thing has been qualified. You don't go to take the visit unless your agent says, okay, I think we're in the ballpark here. Let's go qualify the rest of this stuff. And for some reason, every single year, we just do it over and over again. We don't learn. It's the same thing every year. It's, oh, well, you know, he said this. And, oh, well, if he really wants to win a chip, then he'll come. Folks, we've been through this with every other athlete who's ever done it. And at some point, we'll learn. And until we do, I'm going to keep yelling at people as a guest on Thursday nights and say, it's money first and then the other stuff. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But we need to understand the way you're wired is not the way they're wired. There you go.
100%. So I'm on that train. And just to kind of qualify with context, you know, there's a big difference between OBJ saying, I don't know where these rumors about me wanting $20 million a year are coming from. And then he signs for 18, right? Which is effectively $20 million. But there's a big difference between OBJ, D-Hop, and the money that they're going to command versus a Super Bowl ring, to Bruce's point, which was well stated. Not that we expect anything less from the resident weatherman, as you keep calling him, which I think is funny. But there's a large difference between that guy, D-Hop, right? OBJ. There's a big difference between that guy and Poona Ford, right? I mean, Poona Ford is not going to command $20 million. So for him to take a hometown discount or a discount to go get a Super Bowl ring and shave $3 million a year off to join the Bills, or even a Matt Milano to take 14 versus 17. 3 is a whole lot different, to Bruce's point, than 10 or $15 million. I think what's more important about this as I try to steer it back to the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills have a problem. The Buffalo Bills have had a problem. I said starting last year, sitting next to you in training camp, that the Buffalo Bills have a problem at wide receiver. And there's some solutions potentially on the field. Clearly, the best players don't play. Clearly, the best players aren't the ones that they try to protect necessarily. And I'm not going to get into history and what happened last year necessarily. But if you've been in Buffalo listening to WGR 55, if you are outside of Buffalo and been streaming WGR 55, you've heard Jeremy White talk a lot about this website, Reception Perception, on Twitter, and Matt Harmon, who is a guy that goes through and he basically analyzes every wide receiver in the NFL, every one of them. And he has come down to the fact that, hey, you know what? Gabe Davis is a really nice kind of like dude that can do some cool things, but he's not really a number 2, which speaks to the Stephon Diggs potential, we guess, problem, right? We've heard D-Hop to be opposite of him, which makes complete sense, because it removes that whole double team versus bracket, yada, yada, yada garbage. But at the end of the day, the Buffalo Bills have a problem. And if they're going to do what they did last year, which was roll out an offense at the beginning of the season with 3 boundary wide receivers, and I know there's immediately right now, there's people already typing on YouTube, well, Khalil Shakir can play the boundary. Maybe, Maybe not. They didn't really do it.
If you could see the field.
Right. At the end of the day, they rolled out 3 boundary wide receivers last year, made a huge mistake. Kumaro, Gabe Davis, Stephon Diggs. Huge mistake. And then they let another boundary receiver go because they wanted to protect Khalil Shakir and Isaiah McKenzie, right? Who ended up going to the playoffs and making a big stink, made his mark potentially last year. And we'll see what happens this year. But the Buffalo Bills have a problem at wide receiver. They still have a problem. Now, there's some nice guys. Trent Sherfield is out there, and they drafted the shorter kid, and there's some potential out there in rookies. But is there a solid number 2 on this football team? Is there a definitive Emmanuel Sanders, John Brown? Is there a guy that's number 2 on this football team right now? I love Gabe Davis. I don't think Gabe Davis is going to be a Buffalo Bill in 2024. But at the end of the day, D-Hop makes this offense otherworldly, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that I answered the question, but yeah.
I think I knew where you were trending, and I was going to let you cook because I was sitting next to you at training camp, and yes, we are real people. We do go to training camp. You'll probably see both of us there again this year.
Yeah.
I live in Rochester, so it's in my backyard.
Right.
Needless to say, I've been on the D-Hop train. I've been in Twitter spaces. If you're ever on Twitter and you go into space, I'll probably find me there. I love and hate the DeAndre Hopkins conversation. Do I think DeAndre Hopkins would make the Bills better? Yes, you're damn right. Anybody who thinks that differently is out of their mind. DeAndre Hopkins is a unbelievable talent. Some of the best hands the NFL has ever seen. Not just now, ever. Mm-hmm. The guy has next to no drops in his entire career. The guy is a marvel. He can high point the ball almost better than anybody. You saw what he did in the Hail Murray. He's an unbelievable talent.
And what he could do where he didn't drop a ball, which the Buffalo Bills had two receivers on their team last year that dropped it at a rate of about 48%. So yeah.
What DeAndre Hopkins could do for this team is paramount. But here again lies the issue. Money. Money is always the issue. People think there's always money in the banana stand. And yes, in fact, there is. But here is inherently the issue with that whole thing. You just keep kicking the can down the road. And what's going to end up happening eventually is the money, you're going to have to pay the piper eventually. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have to see guys walk. And yes, there are guys that are going to leave and all that stuff. But I just don't financially think it's the right thing to do. But it could work. It could very well work. And if that's what Stephon Diggs wants, whatever, make it happen, I guess. But I just don't think it's going to. I just don't think at this point they feel that way. I think they have what they need in Kincaid and Deontay Hardy and Trent Sherfield and Gabe Davis potentially taking it. It is a gamble. It is absolutely a gamble. But if all of them pay off, then
what's wild about the reception perception conversation is the Bills are in a weird predicament. They've got Stephon Diggs, who that guy says his win rate is 86% against man and has been pretty much since he came into the league. Like Stephon Diggs has always been a premier route runner at any route that you give him. Like he is the freaking guy. And then the conversation just kind of falls off from there. And I don't know that we've ever seen teams be super successful without a compliment. And Bruce, I sent Bruce a DM. I don't even remember what it was, months ago rather, and just said there's this weird correlation for me that I'm beginning to put together that Super Bowl winners and good dominant football teams always have a dominant tight end. It just seems like. I'm not saying that it's 100%, but 98%. And I don't know, Bruce, if you've ever let that roll in your brain.
You heard it here first. Joe predicted Dalton Kincaid. That's what you just said, right? I mean, so Joe predicted Dalton Kincaid, and because of that, the Bills are going to win the Super Bowl. Right? I mean, that's what I took away from this conversation.
That would be true. We'll see. I mean.
And I think that the hope is that Dalton Kincaid can become that second target, because we talk a lot about the wide receiver room, but it doesn't have to be a wide receiver to be a pass catcher that can be a second target. And specifically, it's the areas of the field that matter. It's not just the amount of targets, because anybody can be second up for the most targets. But if you have a player like Gabe Davis, who primarily wins down the field, and then he becomes a 90 to 100 target guy, then those 90 to 100 targets that you're funneling to a guy who primarily wins down the field are going to start all of a sudden the ADOT, the average distance to target, starts slowly creeping up. And what happens to your efficiency? Your efficiency goes down. If I can take a receiver in a vacuum And you can tell me, Bruce, you can have someone who wins deep, or you can have someone who wins short. I'm taking the person who wins short in a vacuum. Now, obviously, we talk about complementary skill sets, right? But if you think about someone like Gabe Davis versus someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown, okay? Amon-Ra St. Brown does not win deep, right? I think he caught one pass last year that had targets over 20 yards, right?
Nobody's so good.
But you can just funnel an offense through a player like that. You cannot funnel an offense through a player like Gabe Davis in the long run because he's winning down the field. Now, obviously, he can go ballistic like he did against the Chiefs, and that's a real thing that happens, and those games happen. The Chargers game, the Steelers game, these are things where Gabe Davis can go nuclear because he wins down the field. But it doesn't lend itself to a more efficient offense, because if you want to give that guy targets and he wins down the field, you're going to have to give him targets down the field, or you'll be giving him targets in an area of the field where he's not winning, which now increases the amount of contested catches that you're going to have, and you want to avoid that. Everyone talks about how important it is for a receiver or pass catcher to win contested situations. You know what's better? Not being in contested situations. What's better is just getting open. That's the most ideal thing. If you have a wide receiver and he's coming out of college and you go, man, this guy's great at contested catch situations, I go, great. Why did he have to make so many contested catches? Did his quarterback stink? Because that's a reason why you'd have to do it. But this is the N'Keal Harry conversation all over again. It's the J.J. Arcega-Whiteside conversation all over again. Super deep cut, right? Contested catches are what you're trying to avoid. And in order to do that, you want to throw the ball to receivers where they win. And if you have a receiver who wins primarily down the field, then you're going to want to throw it to him primarily down the field. But now, of course, your ADOT starts going up, and now your efficiency starts to take a hit. And all these things kind of link up together to hurt slowly your passing game. And let's be honest, the Bills' passing game was really good last year, okay? It's really good, okay? It went through some weird hiccups and weird lulls and weird bouts of inefficiency last year. Overall, it was still great because it was explosive. But you want it to be explosive and efficient.
Consistent.
We're greedy. We want it to be all those things. And in order to do that, you hope a player like Dalton Kincaid can provide you with that short and intermediate part of the field where he works in between zones. And he does, because let's be honest, we talk a lot about separating from man coverage. The overwhelming majority of snaps are against zone. It's the way it is, right? Most man-heavy teams in the league don't run man 60% of the time. That's not a thing, right? Zone is the overwhelming majority of what you're going to get. So you want someone who can separate from man, and a tight end who can separate from man is very rare. There's not a lot of them who can. But having somebody who can consistently win in these short and intermediate parts of the field is really going to help open this offense up. And to Joe's point, that can be a tight end.
It can be. What's wild about this whole conversation, and I'm just going to go there, but we watched Isaiah Hodgins play every wide receiver position in training camp last year and win consistently in the slot. You're talking about a guy that wins short, right? And they let him go, and then they drafted a tight end. There's just, everything he said, exclamation point, Bruce. So, yes.
Well, I think the other part that we have to think about, too, which is potentially going to help, well, two things. Obviously, Josh's UCL. You saw that his short to intermediate game last year with that injury was inhibited. But the one thing I think that we potentially don't touch on that I think is going to help is the actual usage of a running game. I think I don't, let me say this, and this is no disrespect to Devin Singletary. He was a fine running back, and what he did for us in the couple of years he was here was just great. But the truth be told is no one was afraid of Devin Singletary, and they never were going to be. He wasn't fast enough to beat anybody, and he wasn't strong enough to blow you over. But what they did was James Cook he can outrun you. He's got the speed. And then they handcuffed him to Damian Harris and Latavius, old man, still got some hops, Murray.
And Naheem Hines. And Naheem Hines is still this football team.
And for sure, Naheem Hines, I don't think he's going to see as much time behind, running the rock. But I do think those three, they provide something the Buffalo Bills just haven't had. They could potentially have a balanced running attack, and they can give you that lightning and thunder that I think the Bills dramatically needed. Because the fact of the matter is, when a defense doesn't feel threatened or are not really having to worry about scheming against your running game, that makes you a very one-sided opponent. And when they only had to worry about Josh, well, they can literally just do what they did, and that is bracket Diggs and double cover Gabe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, because the Bills didn't have anybody over the middle.
Mm-hmm.
You saw that Dawson Knox was covering on the right with Spencer, and then over the middle, you had a hodgepodge of just meh. This year, I think that changes, and I think that incorporating all those things, we've gone very far past the DeAndre Hopkins conversation, and that's 100% fine. I figured that with you two, that would happen because we're all long-winded and it's just whatever.
Fault. Bruce, he's blaming us for this, Bruce.
Dude invites us on the show and then just backs the bus up directly underneath us. Well, maybe if you guys weren't
mutually blaming everybody, including myself. Needless to say, I think that I do agree. Isaiah Hodgins should be on this team. I think he has a lot to offer. That, of course, he is not, and he's with Brian Dable, and God, I hope he makes a great career of himself, and I think Dable will utilize him. But I think we've got some really good stuff. If you look, I think Cook, what he can do. If you saw my Twitter, I compared him today to Breece Hall. People were clamoring, saying Breece Hall was the offensive rookie of the year. Potentially would have been had he played the whole season. Yeah. And their stats were damn near identical. And James Cook was used on average of the first 10 games, 3 carries a game. That was not for Breece Hall. Breece Hall was averaging 17 to 18. But let's move on. Let's move to the meat and potatoes of tonight's conversation. Now that we're 40 minutes into tonight's episode. Obviously, this past couple weeks, and really forever, because Bills fans are nefarious and like to have something to gripe about, including myself. Sean McDermott is a topic that a lot of people are clamoring right about. Jeremy White and his guest of the day have been talking about this situation. I've brought it up on my show, in fact, and it's something I think we need to discuss. I DM'd Bruce, I DM'd Joe, and I said, this is what we're going to talk about. This is what's going to happen. And it's about Sean McDermott. Obviously, he's very polarizing. He is a guy that fans love. He gets joked about for all his clapping. He has revitalized the city in a way that only Marv Levy has done in the past. He has changed the culture, and he has become one of the winningest coaches in Buffalo Bills history. But inherently, there are issues. There are things that people have seen with Sean McDermott. There is a big question mark. Can he get us over the hump? Can he win in the biggest moments? Can he get us to a Super Bowl, and can he win? So what we're going to talk about tonight is in regards to that, because obviously you've seen the Leslie Frazier situation. Leslie Frazier left the team saying that he'd potentially come back. He needed time, but now we've seen him going and meeting with other teams. Eric Washington promoted to assistant head coach after some people question, is he doing a good job? Even though Daquan Jones sat there and kind of said, yes, he is. He's a very good coach. So what I'm trying to find out with all the people that are concerned with McDermott and whether or not he can get us to the promised land, Joe, what do you feel is the current temperature surrounding McDermott, and is there cause for concern?
The current temperature where? Inside the building or outside the building?
Bingo.
See, that's the true testament, and you can decipher and decide that yourself.
I'm old enough to remember names like Greg Williams and Mike Mularkey and 7-9 Dick Duran and Doug Marrone and Rex Ryan. I don't know what the hell you people want, right? It's like, oh, he loses challenges. Oh, he's too conservative. I just, it could be worse. And as much as the reality is if he was fired from this football team, head coaches of merit would line up to coach Josh Allen. Let's be honest. They're not going to line up to coach anybody on this football team besides Josh Allen. That's who they want to be tied to. But at the end of the day, there's no guarantee. There's no promise. Andrew Reid was the guy that couldn't get them over the hump until he got them over the hump. To me, Sean McDermott is not a problem. To me, Sean McDermott isn't an issue. To me, Sean McDermott isn't a concern. I'll be honest with you. Anybody that's listened to my show for 5 minutes, and I know Bruce knows this as well. I'm a student of leadership. I consider myself a leadership kind of guru. I'm very big into a lot of different things as it pertains to thoughts of leadership and theories of leadership. I've read a shit ton of leadership books. A lot of them I can tell you that Sean McDermott has read the same ones I have, just based on the stuff that I hear him say and that I hear him parrot. The only concern I have about Sean McDermott, the only one I've ever had about Sean McDermott, is literally what happened, whatever it was, a week ago or 2 weeks ago, which was basically the Stephon Diggs situation. All he had to do was come out in that press conference and say, Stephon was here yesterday, passed his physical. He was here this morning for team meetings. I've excused him and sent him home for the day. Why? Personal reasons. Not going to get into it. And it's over. The kink in the armor that I saw last week is the only thing that gives me a little bit of cause of concern, because, and this is why, leadership lessons. Culture trumps strategy every day of the week. You give me a team with great culture, they will beat a team with great strategy and poor culture. We saw a team for years that could have potentially had great strategy and poor culture. John Fina and Jerry Ostrowski talk about when Tom Donahoe and Greg Williams took over this football team, it just went right in the toilet. And that was the beginning of the drought. And it literally took 17 years to get out of it, right? So you're talking about a situation where it takes a long time to build good culture, which Sean McDermott has done. He is a leader of men. Everybody that plays for him loves him. But it takes 1 second to destroy culture, and it doesn't come back like that. It takes a long time for it to build back. That's the only concern I have, is how, after that small little bit of a hiccup, which might be a blip and mean nothing at all, are there going to be ripples in the pool? Are there going to be ramifications? Or is that culture strong enough for even Sean to stand before Steph, before Josh, before the team and say, I effed up. I handled that bad. I'm sorry, guys. It won't happen again. And then they're trusting him that it's not going to happen again, which I believe there is. Outside of that, I don't know what Bills Mafia wants, right? You want a guy that you want a losing coach that gets his challenges right 100% of the time or 90% of the time? I don't. Give me the guy that gets his challenges wrong and wins football games, because that's what this is about. And I know that it's about winning the last football game. And we can get into other conversations around that type of stuff, but I'll make room for Bruce at this point.
I think when I have conversations around Sean McDermott, what I said on the pod today, so ironically enough, the two things we've just talked about, Gabe Davis and Sean McDermott, are the exact two topics that I mentioned on the pod today that released. And when I was talking about Sean McDermott,
which you guys should all check out, by the way.
Fantastic. Sure. Yeah. You know, why not? Let's just go Bruce exclusive, Buffalo Rumblings, by all means.
Let's go.
But let's just assume for a second that let's take off the head coaching hat and let's put on a quarterback hat. Okay. If you are a Chargers fan and your quarterback is Justin Herbert, are you excited about the future and the potential that you could have a quarterback who you could win a Super Bowl with if you have a Justin Herbert quarterback? The answer is probably yes. You're probably excited about that. But what if I come to you and I tell you, well, he's not Josh Allen. Well, he's not Patrick Mahomes. Well, you know, he hasn't accomplished the stuff that Joe Burrow has accomplished. You know, he hasn't even gotten more Jalen Hurts has gotten. Are you still excited? Yeah, you're probably still excited. Why? Because you don't think Justin Herbert needs to be Josh Allen in order to win a Super Bowl. It's about the threshold that you think is good enough to win the Super Bowl. We're not operating under any delusion that Justin Herbert's the best quarterback in football. I don't think anybody would think Justin Herbert is the best quarterback in football. But they're excited because they think he's good enough. This is the way I feel about Sean McDermott. I operate under no delusions that Sean McDermott is the best coach in football. I don't need to, though. This is the important thing. It's about thresholds and susceptibility. If you say, gosh, I want a better head coach, okay, that's fine. How many head coaches do you think are better? 6, 8, 9, 5, 10? Okay, great. Oh, I think Sean McDermott's the 12th best coach. Okay. Can you win a Super Bowl with the 12th best coach in the NFL? Have there been many examples of teams who have won the Super Bowl with the 12th best coach? Oh, it's about thresholds of acceptability when it comes to Sean McDermott, but we don't think about it that way. All we think about is all the people ahead of us in line. It would be like being a Justin Herbert fan and just constantly spending your time mad that Justin Herbert's not Josh Allen.
Right.
He doesn't need to be Josh Allen. The question isn't whether or not Sean McDermott is the best coach in football, because I don't think he is. The question is he good enough? And that's where the nuance comes into the conversation. How good of a coach do you need to be to not be a net negative toward your team's goals of winning a Super Bowl? Also, do you watch other football? I really question sometimes if people watch other football teams, like ever. Like, do you watch Brandon Staley? Did you watch him get like torched last year for his coaching decisions? Like, did you watch these other teams who do crazy things? Mike Tomlin is consistently discussed as one of the best coaches in football. Have you watched Mike Tomlin recently? He's made some questionable decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Bill Belichick, all of a sudden, the shine comes off Bill Belichick a little bit when he doesn't have Tom Brady anymore. Like,
hold that thought. So if you take last year's New England Patriots and you put 2012 Tom Brady on that team, they're winning 12 football games, right?
Probably. So my question is not whether or not, to those people, it's not whether or not Sean McDermott is the best coach, because I don't think anybody thinks he is. It's where is your line? Where do you draw the line? Where's the threshold of acceptability? Is he a top 8 coach? Yes. Okay, well, great. Can you win a Super Bowl with a top 8 coach? Are there plenty of examples of people winning a Super Bowl with a top 8 coach?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, he's a top 16 coach. Okay, great. He's a top 16 coach. Do you think there's plenty of examples of people winning the Super Bowl with a top 16 coach? That's what the conversation we should be having. It's not whether or not we're going to get into arguments as to whether or not he's better than Kyle Shanahan, who also hasn't won a Super Bowl, right? Those two non-Super Bowl winning head coaches who people talk about a lot, right? Because, again, follow other teams, right? Because the 49ers fandom are currently having a discussion about Kyle Shanahan and whether or not he's the guy to get him over the hump. That's a real thing that's happening because it happens in other places too, and we should pay attention. So for me, it's okay. How good of a coach do you think he is? And do you think that threshold has been met? And if you don't think that threshold is met, how high do you have to go to get the threshold? And what data are you using to verify it? So for me, that's the discussion about Sean McDermott. And I think we're having the constantly wrong discussion because we're constantly focusing on the things he doesn't do well and the coaches who are better than him. And all of that stuff is true. All of it's true. I'm not sitting here pounding the table that Sean McDermott's the best coach in football. It's about what is a reasonable threshold of acceptability for how good your coach has to be. And that's the conversation I think we should be having.
Agreed.
So went ahead and my brother did some little detail research just for context right now. You'll see this on the screen. Select coaches with at least 50 wins above a 600% in regular season and a good quarterback, no Super Bowl wins. You've got Sean McDermott, Marty Schottenheimer, Bud Grant, and Marv Levy. This just shows,
that's a cherry pick stat, right? That's a cherry pick stat. But
yeah. Oh, absolutely. He literally went out and found those specific names. But I'm gonna show you at the back end how this makes sense. This is their best 6 years and their first 6 years, and how they looked, who their quarterbacks were, and how it compares to Sean McDermott. Because the big thing is, Sean McDermott, he went right from being a defensive coordinator into being a head coach, and he had Josh Allen. Right? He had Josh Allen after Tyrod Taylor. Years of experience alongside of that stuff. Right? And then their first full 6 years, how he looked, what their records were, total winning seasons. Josh really makes Sean McDermott, just like any head coach, would look good with a high quality quarterback. Then if you go against Super Bowl winners, Belichick, Peyton, and Reed, he's there with every single one of them. The reason I wanted to bring this up, because beside from the fact that my wife loves Bruce Willis and bald men, and that includes Sean McDermott, that's her boyfriend. My point beyond this is the fact that there is this weird misconception that Sean McDermott, whether he's a good coach or a bad coach, that he's on the hot seat right now. I want you to understand something. What Sean McDermott did last year is actually astounding. To take a team and make them 13-3 with everything they went through was unbelievably talented. It was just like Joe said, a masterclass of leadership.
For sure.
To deal with everything that they had to basically trudge through, from the Buffalo shooting to the snowstorm to 3 games in 11 days. To Josh Allen's UCL injury, to the mammoth amount of injuries and everything else in between.
Tim Pegula, John Murphy, like DeMar Hamlin, right?
The list goes on and on and on and on,
Mm-hmm.
right? My question for everybody, like Joe has said, like Bruce has said, like some people have even said in the chat, let's say you do get rid of Sean McDermott, the guy that's built this and this culture into what it is, the guy that has turned Buffalo from a laughing stock into a respected destination, not only for people to sign and take less money, but to be a bouncing board for the rest of their career or to want to win a Super Bowl. Who do you bring in that's going to continue that continuity, continue that leadership, continue that culture that has been built in Buffalo? Are you going to do that with a college coach? Are you going to do that with a veteran coach? Because here's the thing, the transition between those two is going to be rocky. And again, just as much as you think you're wasting some of your players' careers, that is inherently possible with the next coach that you bring in if everything goes according to plan. And I understand the prospect because the Eagles did it. They went ahead and they got rid of their head coach. They went ahead and they brought in another guy and won a Super Bowl. Right. And
Chip Kelly and after somebody else that didn't do well. That's the problem is there's a law of diminishing returns. So, and I don't mean to cut you off, but there's an aspect of like, hey, we've got a really good team and we've got this schlep at the top that can't get us over the hump. So we're going to go get a guy that's going to get us over the hump. And in every instance, every circumstance, right down to John Gruden and the Buccaneers, you take whatever the team is, how they couldn't get over the hump with, if you take the Buccaneers and you look at that situation and they bring in John Gruden and they win. Once that first year is over, it's downhill. It's a downhill slope. I don't care who you're talking about, whether it's Barry Switzer with Dallas, whether it's, I forget the guy that followed Bill Walsh in the Niners, like every single situation, John Gruden with the Bucks, every single one of them is like, I took over that dude's team and we did really well, maybe won a Super Bowl, and then it was just just right to the dirt after that. So I don't know, man. Sorry.
No, honestly, what you said is 100% correct. And at the end of the day,
I was thinking of George Seifert, who followed Bill Walsh, but yeah, sorry.
I love me some Sean McDermott, and it's not, it's not me just being a homer biased or whatever. It's like most of us, we're all Bills fans. We went through the 17-year drought. When you go ahead and you bring in a guy like Sean McDermott, who has changed the culture, who has revitalized this entire team, and on top of it, they're building a stadium, and I promise you, and I've said this before, people don't believe me. Greg Tom said echoed the same thing. Terry Pegula is not going to get rid of the guy who built culture right before they're building a brand new stadium and asking for a lot of money.
For sure.
That's just not good business.
For sure.
Needless to say, what I want to end the show with is this question. I'm going to start off with you, Bruce. What is your perspective on this, Bruce? What is the benchmark, if any, even if there is one at all, that McDermott needs to hit in order to keep himself safe of any discussions about a said hot seat, or does he need to worry at all?
We're talking about this year?
Correct.
I think that barring an absolute collapse, the likes of which we've never seen, there is essentially nothing that could happen that would cause McDermott to be fired after this year.
Am I going next? Because I'm in the same boat. Even if the Bills, if the Bills come in third place in the AFC East, it's going to be because there's a slight slip someplace, which is normal inside of these types of conversations, year to year conversations with teams. And the Dolphins are improved and the Jets are improved. I think Sean McDermott could post a sub 10 win record for the next couple years. I don't know what's going on right now for the next couple of years. And I think you're still not having a conversation about Sean McDermott getting fired, especially if the Jets and the Dolphins are proved to be good football teams. Like, if you don't like Sean McDermott, I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah. At the end of the day, when you're looking at a situation like the Buffalo Bills are in, and a team that's as good as they are, you don't rock the boat. And especially even more so than that, you don't rock the boat with a guy that has provided continuity, sustainability, consistency, something that Buffalo has been far removed from for the longest time. I don't know if you guys remember, but I am having zero desire of having to go through another debacle of watching a guy like Rex Ryan and his dipshit brother riding a tandem bicycle in Buffalo. And that's what people remember. I am 100% on board with Mr. I like to clap a lot. If that's the worst thing about Sean McDermott, God willing, I'm fine. But you have to look, and everybody likes to bring up different instances and different things that happen. And yes, 13 seconds is it's unfortunate. But here's the thing, and people like to bring up that with Sean McDermott's coaching. Let me remind you, if they want to call that, right? And it was Leslie Frazier that called everything else. Look at what Leslie Frazier's defense was, and then look at the defense in that game. And tell me they were different. They weren't. That was Leslie Frazier's defense in 13 seconds. It was an unfortunate situation against, even though Joe doesn't believe Tyreek Hill will be in the Hall of Fame, but I do. Those are 3 future Hall of Famers. Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes. 3 unbelievable talents with a Hall of Fame coach, a very, very good team. Yes, they won. It happens. 2 quarterbacks played basically one of the most insane and impressive fourth quarters any team has ever played against each other in. The fact is, there's context. There's different reasons for all different stuff in every game, in every different season. Last year alone, you can talk about it. We've done it in litany of how many times they've dealt with stuff. Sean McDermott has been a beacon of not only positivity for this team, but he has brought in success, a 632 win percentage over his career in Buffalo, which I don't know about you. That's pretty darn good. He has been very, very good for Buffalo. And at the end of the day, guys, I don't know if you remember, but that burn and churn every 3 years of a new GM, head coach, and quarterback ain't too fun. And if you get rid of one, you're getting rid of the quarterback. Because I guarantee you, as much as Josh Allen loves Buffalo right now, you go ahead and you get rid of Sean McDermott, that could potentially sour your quarterback. And I don't want to play that game, and I don't want to have to deal with a roster that could be potentially havoc because of getting rid of a guy who's created a culture that has undoubtedly been something that has been a staple for Buffalo's success. So that being said, gentlemen, I appreciate you. I appreciate you taking a little bit of time on this Thursday night. Bring in my little boy real quick. My wife just got home from her high school graduation, and I've got my little dude.
It's a little
my son Griffin's going to join us for a second for the last couple minutes of the show. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know, this is my beautiful little boy Griffin, my son. He's going to be 5 months old on Saturday. But Bruce, Joe, oh, there you go. There's a close-up shot. Bruce, Joe, go ahead, tell people where they can find your absolutely fantastic content.
You can find me on social media platforms at Bruce Exclusive, and my show, the Bruce Exclusive, drops every Thursday on the Buffalo Rumblings podcast network. I also dabble in some writing. You can find some of my articles on BuffaloRumblings.com.
Joe Miller. You can find me on Twitter at Joe Miller Wired. I also am on Buffalo Rumblings and a part of the Vidcast network. And I have been on a break since the Bills lost to the Cincinnati Bengals in the playoffs, but we'll soon be returning. The Overreaction post-game show or podcast or sports show, as Bruce likes to call it, will be returning in some format. And then the Off Tackle with John Fina show will also be returning, and the Hump Day Hotline will also be returning as soon as football activities start up. And yeah, I feel like the creative juices have returned because it's been a grind.
Absolutely. Guys, first off, make sure you're following them on Twitter. Make sure you check out their content. Also, make sure you hit that like button and share this content. You know, the number one thing is, whether you're listening to me or any other content creator, the lifeblood of our work, and I promise you there is a lot of work that goes into this, is sharing our content, telling your family and friends, making sure you let them know, and liking this stuff, sharing it on Twitter, because that tells people about our show. So I truly do appreciate it. Griffin appreciates it as well. And you can find me on Twitter at @ThomasDeLoss. Like we said before, I got some great contests going on. Go partake in those. You can find me in Twitter Spaces all the single time, every single day. Finally, just want to say, make sure you guys are tapping into Cover One Pass. Great content moving forward. Again, I just want to say, like I started off the show, guys, be positive. If you haven't talked to somebody you love in a long time, if there's somebody that means something to you, tell them that you love them, give them a call, say hello. I truly, truly, truly believe in the power of positivity. I think it's far removed from our society, but we can bring that back. Guys, it's an exciting season. We're very close to training camp. Get tapped in. A lot of great content out there. A lot of great content here. Every Thursday night, you can find me here on the Buffalo Rumblings, the Cover One Network. I've looked at Joe Miller and I'm saying that, dear Lord, over on the Cover One Network. God, it's been too long. Guys, I do appreciate it. Every Thursday night, 9 p.m. We'll see you guys here next week. It's been real. It's been fun. Let's do it like we finish it always. Go Bills.
Go Bills.
Go Bills.
The Bills make me wanna. The Bills make me